All right, let's kick it off. I'm sure people will be jumping on as we go. Let's. I've got we got some of Justin and UB. Let's actually just let's start with your rings, and then D. I have that negative ring muscle up on here too, so we can kind of keep it on a low ring topic and go from there. All right, I'm gonna play. This is ring push up, right, Justin?
Yeah, fresh from the gymnastics course.
I can tell like with your shape you're focusing. Is it playing for you guys?
No, it's not.
I don't know why it's not. Good videos play. Let me try to reopen that one real quick, and if not, we'll go to these and then we'll come back to it. That's annoying. I literally played a clip right before I got on the call, and then now we're on it. Few seconds, guys. That's easy. There we go. I've got good and technique stuff. What do you guys see? What did you feel, Justin?
What I noticed was I was piking at my hips more than I thought I was.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big thing.
That's my first thing. Yeah. Like if you just squeezed your butt, it would take that away.
Yeah. I also
I
thought
like
it
how
was,
conscious you are of it though.
yeah. But I was also trying to supinate more at the when the arms fully extend, and I'm surprised of how little it actually is extending.
So
And I
you
think
know
it's a
where
strength thing actually.
you know where I can see it actually a lot is if you watch her. That was a good rep to actually see it. I'm gonna slow mo it. I can see that you're trying to supinate with where your elbow is. Like you get there, you see how your elbows suddenly like if there was someone in front of you, you would show it to them and you would
Yeah.
have that external rotation, even though the hands didn't move and like you wanted to see the hand actually supinate open. I do think you did a really good job at like getting that movement there. Because if I look at the strap at your finish, you have that effect of what makes that so hard. Like the strap starts to leave the arms and starts to not hug you anymore, and it's not hugging you in this region. I just do think the dynamic like nature of the rings and like the push up is like you're kind of still keeping them tight, and it is a tough movement. But I do see your supination there, so I don't think you totally missed that, even though the hands didn't move. Looking at the is that DJ you? I'm gonna mute you a second. Yeah. You have just a lot of background D. Looking at the like the shoulder rotation, especially as a coach, like that's what I do want to see there. So that was really good. And then what's anything else you guys notice?
Okay, really quickly.
Oh,
So
you're okay.
I'm wondering if he should maybe bring his feet a little bit further back, because like especially on the second one, you can see how he's trying to, like, his shoulders are coming into like a different angle, or not angle, but instead of like the first one and after the second one, he's kind of going further down, and then the second one, he's coming more here.
To the chest.
So, yeah, so I'm wondering what is the better position? Because if it's like the second one that he did, then maybe he should bring his feet back so he's more aligned with the rings. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, maybe a slight adjustment, very, very slight, because also too, like, we don't want to come to the chest, right? Like when we're doing a push up or like a bench press is even better, a better way to think of it. Like I want to come down and be like right under the chest, and it's almost like at my sternum. So I think Justin, you are very, very close to that, but I think in moving the feet back, it would maybe just be like a smidge. Like I don't think it'd be much at all. And then I do think just because the movement gets a little tougher is where you start to see like the position, like where he, like that's way back there. Where like the positions are. Like, you know, when you start to, when you're doing a push up and you start to like morph and change your body trying to, or you start to move your hands, trying to get a little slightly different body part, that might be happening a little bit. I also think it's a hard lineup. I think Justin, you did a really good job on these by elevating them a little bit and not having them by the floor to make it a more scalable option. Because it's kind of like the ring dip or the dips we talked about. I think if you take this and we like this because of the dynamic element of the shoulder stability, and we love it because we can also get an extended range of motion, right? I would rather somebody be higher on them and get both of those benefits in the extended range than to be lower and they like don't do that range of motion. Does that make sense? Versus if you just put plates on the floor and you did a deficit push up with plates, we see that a lot too, where people like don't really go in between the plates and they kind of stop short and they don't get the extended range like we want. So the rings are a really good way that we can make the push up easier and get more range of motion and then pair it with things like a regular push up or like static on the floor. So I do like that you adjusted it. But to Dee's point, I do think it makes it sometimes a little tougher to get like the positioning perfect on it. I've got one more thing. So we've got, if he squeezes his butt, he's not as piked. The supination, I see that working, which I like, even though it wasn't like absolutely perfect. I'm gonna play it one more time. There's one more thing I would like Justin to focus on this. Really with the arms. Think of like tension. If you guys remember the handstand, wall facing handstand push-up video we did, and when the girl went down, he was like, squeeze and hug yourself before you drive. That doesn't change with a push-up. So how Justin kind of goes down and he's in this like pretty good tight position. And then when he starts to push, the elbows want to flare out and then they flare back in, right? I would try to stay tighter. Like if you're gonna imagine you're gonna hug yourself the entire time with like your elbows and your arms to create like that torque in the shoulder. Yeah, exactly. Be that motion that you just did. That would be what I would like to see you try to do too. That
So
same
doing
torque.
these,
Go ahead.
doing these ring push-ups, that's basically was my number one primary focal point.
Trying to
because
keep
every push-up, every bench press, my elbows start
Wanna
wanting to come
shoot.
out. And so for this, I'm like, all right, we're keeping the elbows tucked in. And like one of the things I noticed, I was like, man, I did a pretty good job keeping my elbows tucked in this whole.
and you can see because like the direction they're breaking. I love it. I love it. I love it. You're in a good spot there. And you can see that you fight it because when you come back to like the tops, I think this third one's a really good one to look at. Like you flare out and then you do like re-supinate and get it back in. So I can see that there is like the movement there. It's like when someone's pushing their knees out and they're really, really they're really trying hard to push the knees out on the squat, but it's still collapsing. And you're like, okay, well, we're working on it. There's application there. And I like that. I do see that with you here.
So maybe something that would help him for now is maybe put the rings a little bit higher until he gets that, like he perfects that, and then lower it little by little.
Yeah,
I
and I
agree
think
with
that,
the same thing. I agree with that.
yeah, 100%. And I think too that something that could really help is like with the rings higher, obviously it's going to be easier. And like if you go to do them, and you're like, well, this is too easy. Then you do a really good job on the down, right? Maybe tempo the up, which is probably going to be horrifically hard even with the rings higher. But I think the more time we can spend in a position, and not just for this, anything we're doing, the more time we can spend in that position in proper, with proper mechanics, when we have those little like fractions of the range of motion that are weak points, like those fractions are going to get stronger faster if we're spending time there versus like if we go through it very quickly, we kind of never spend time in that position, and it never gets, I don't want to say never gets better, but gets better at a much slower rate. So get creative and tempo the up, or do both. Do a 3-second down, 3-second up. I mean, that would be real hard. I think that was definitely a good example. And pair it with like normal floor stuff too, I would say. Anything else you guys want to add on this one? And then we'll go to the ring bustle up negative. I think good application though from the gymnastics course for sure. Like I could see you applying.
Even when he fully extends, you can see like he's putting his upper back is up at what they
Driving.
say. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like driving through the rings. He's into that, like that gymnastics plank, like not our ab plank that we want. I do like it overall, Justin. I like when someone goes to a course and really like starts to apply and put into play what they learned. Like, why else would you go? There's so many people that go, I feel like they waste that. All right. Muscle up. All right, so the prescription here was just low ring negatives to build strength, especially in different parts of this range of motion, especially with the ring muscle up. Like people get really strong in the pull, people get really strong in the dip, and then this whole transitional area becomes a really massive glaring problem. And I do think this was a good job overall. What are you guys' thoughts? Good, bad?
I think maybe I can make the pike a little bit. I mean, not the pike, the hollow, squeeze my butt a little bit more. Because I was a little bit pikey maybe at the beginning.
So I had the first thought too, but then I realized what's causing you to pike isn't because you're trying to lose a hollow. It's because your feet are hitting the floor. And once your feet hit the floor, and then just your hips,
you're gonna have to bend. Yeah. To D, what your point is maybe literally only in this position is where you can improve it. And then because to Justin's point,
that's what I was saying.
Yeah, your feet are for sure gonna hit the floor and you can't do it. And really at the end of the day, like if you went and ripped off a muscle up and that was your ending position, I don't care. That's, you know what I mean? Like you got your muscle up. And then the point of this drill was the positions of a muscle up. So it's, if you're being hyper critical, then yeah, squeeze your butt here, get your feet more underneath yourself. But I really don't even mind it. What's another thought? It doesn't have to be, a bad critique.
I forgot the name of the position when we have the rings at the chest. What's the name of that position? Is there a name for it?
I'm sure there is.
Only thing I would say is maybe find a little pause there a little bit longer, because that is one of the hardest positions. And like since you're doing it the like slow eccentric kind of approach, like just I would maybe consider pausing that for
Could
about
be,
3
could be
seconds.
for sure helpful, especially with like for the strength
I
aspect of
was
it.
trying real hard to hold it, but that was as
It's
much as I could.
it's
And
so
the
hard to
reason why I
hold.
was suggesting that because I'm gonna start putting that position holds, this isometric holds into like my accessory work. And I
I
forgot to do
love
it this
that.
week, but I'm like, I'm gonna start doing it. So that's why I mentioned
I
it.
love that. That position and that hold, when I do those, my lat and my upper lat there blows up. Like when I'm coaching multiple classes of ring muscle ups and I have to hold that spot while teaching and talking, oh, it's so tough. Um, I think overall though, I really liked and I wanted to share this video because it's a really good job. And I'm gonna point out like some small things of why I wanted to share that with you guys, you know, as a from an athlete point of view, but also from a coach point of view. So the prescription was only negatives, right? I wanted to symbolize this low ring muscle up as much as I could and just like turn it into a little more of a strength with good position rather than it start to become a struggle and like the mechanics break down too much. So I just took going up and we applied what we know going down to it, which we know can be really effective for gymnastics. Um, Coming down, relating it to Justin's elbows and Justin's video, you see right here how important it is to have that same torque and that same closeness. Like if you take those elbows or those arms and you start to spread them and it spreads the hands, this is not the position that's not possible. She's going to fall straight through and we just lost the intent and the skill of like a strict muscle up, right? So even from a, like you look at it from a push up all the way to the more advanced things, it all stays the same. So I think that's a really important thing to recognize. That closeness stays. This is the part I probably care about the most. Like Justin pointed out, like we're scraping ribs, we're insanely close. She brings them together. It's still at a good point. So she didn't let herself like fall through and then she's already down here. It passes through the exact position she's going to need to pass through if she's doing a strict muscle up. And even if it's a more dynamic, you know, he's done a couple ring muscle ups in her entire life. So we know when she does a kipping ring muscle up, it's going to be still a very low pass through catch. So we have to mimic that so hard on the strict movement because we know she's not going to do a kipping muscle up and catch up here with her hands already like down her ribs. That's one of the biggest mistakes I see when people are doing low ring work is not taking time on this position, like Justin was saying, and really embracing it. It sucks. It's really hard. So people try to skip it over. And then I think too, like they just see someone that's an advanced athlete turn over on a kipping ring muscle up and they're like, oh, I just need to get through. And that is the case, but it's also not the case. So really good job with the tension there. And then the last thing, obviously she still gains control, it's still tight. Actually, I got one more. When she comes through, how she's leaned back, right? And what's that look like? If you just took her feet and you put her feet in front of her, she's doing a ring row. Like a ring muscle up, the position is a ring row. So I like that she's not vertical, that she is horizontal. And when she does a strict, it's going to be like a hollow body and there's going to be like this lean back. So that's really important. And then the very last thing, when she's here, she doesn't stop there, right? We see this a lot on, you know, toenail spotted pull-ups, the ring work where the athlete kind of stops there and they did not finish the full range of motion to like not that it has to be a dead hang, but I want the arms, the elbows extended, the arms totally finished. There in this position here is going to be the most lat activation. So if we're missing that, especially on a negative or a client is, we're missing a lot of bang for our buck. And then if we let's reverse it and to see how it looks, should look great. Like if that is a ring muscle up, right? I love those positions. So more so wanted to show this video of like the good job it was. So when you're coaching class or you're practicing these things, like these are going to be potentially your steps for a low ring. I may have someone go, okay, pull to the sternum and fist bump yourself. You have the false grip in. So this is step one. Fist bump, hold. I'm gonna hold them there, remind them they can use their feet because we know it's a really hard position. We'll do reps of that. I'll correct that position, right? So that's one, and then I'm gonna show them two. Two is gonna be, I'll go one, they're here, two, they're here, and they're gonna stop in that position. This looks very simple for us, but you'd be surprised how many people are already like standing and locked out, or they're split out with the rings, and we got to bring them and maybe you can tactile them back through. And then position three, if they want to dip, they can dip. If they want to do a jumping ring dip, they can do a jumping ring dip into support. I don't care. I'm like three. They go ahead and do their dip or they finish. They do their jumping ring dip, and then I do the down when I'm coaching it as well. I'll go down, hold that position because I need to emphasize the transition. Fist bump, hold that position, lower yourself. So I literally go 1, 2, 3 slowly before I start to let them flow through, like if it was in a workout or on their own. Because we have to make sure, like Justin pointed out, that middle part is very on point, or else really we're gonna miss the skill of a ring muscle up, even if the person has, and we've seen these people, has the pull strength, has the press out strength, and you're like, it's just a skill problem, but they're not spending the time there. And then we can get more dynamic. Like it doesn't have to be a strict tono spot like Dee was doing in this video. We can start to go through when they're getting that position down fast. You know, there's a million feet on a box, a band under their butt where they're flying through, and it's more like a kipping to develop the skill too. Definitely one of the hardest, let's stay in the gymnastics chain, one of the hardest class things to teach. I think like the group management, when you're especially doing a ring muscle up, has to be very, very controlled and structured. And another good tip too, if you're coaching it, is like splitting the group in half. So not everybody's on the rings. You have half your group on the rings, and then the people that aren't on the rings, give them like something that you don't have to watch them do behind you. Like let's do plank shoulder taps. Let's do, you know, a stretch, something like that. So they're a little occupied, and they're not just like standing there bored. Also, you're keeping everybody in motion while still taking the time to teach. All right. Just a quick reminder and context. We had Elise working on some like bar muscle up drills. We looked at a video last week where she was on the box. She was doing like a very like press down into the hollow, slow one with a pause, and then a faster one, and then she would do a jumping muscle. And the problem we found with her jumping muscle up is the moment she knew she was going to actually pull, she reached her chest again and she got into an arch. And we know that's position she's not going to get a muscle up in, but she has to stay in hollow. So made the recommendation to just point that out and be more conscious, and then to actually jump on the rig and get some like hip to bar pulls and like just more dynamic hipping motion. So that's what this video is. What do you guys have? I have two fast thoughts.
I think she should jump into more of a pike than she is.
That was my first thought. I'm like, man, if she jumps with those legs and feet out in front, that arch is just going to get a lot more aggressive, and she's going to be able to be a lot more explosive. So I think that's a drill that may seem super simple to us, that because we do it all the time, but it's actually something that I think is worth teaching and worth potentially programming sometimes for people. Mike that used to get on the call, I used to have him do 30 jump into pikes, like as like a skill. Because when he would jump up, he was very similar to this. He would jump up just straight as a board, and he just had no momentum and tight shoulders. So we had like a double whammy. So yeah, 100%. Let's jump into a pike. We're gonna get a lot more from that. What's another thought?
I'd say maybe keep her eyes forward, not look at the bar.
Yeah. Just like a forward gaze. I think for her, there's a lot of she has so much thought right now on her positioning because like, last week we looked at it and she has the habit of doing that big Superman to try to reach her chest and get as high as she can go. So like in an ideal world, if it's the gymnastics course, they're gonna yell at her to look across the room. 100% right. But I think for her, and we have some background on her, I'm extremely happy with that right there. That's a that's a big deal for Elise. She never is in this position. She's always in the opposite position, trying to reach higher. So I don't care that she's not like a full hip to bar or higher. That right there, that is the skill she needs for her muscle up. That is the position you need to be in. So like overall, I was super, super stoked to see her send this video with this result. I think that was a really, really good adjustment. I've just got one more thing, and I would be a little cautious with this last one. I think it goes to what Dee said, like jump up in the pike because we need to get more aggressive, right? When she jumps up, she's a little pikey there, which I don't care. Great. She's gonna need those hips, right? You know that. And she does get them open, but they're not like this, that especially that one. Watch her hips when she like gets into that hollow. They're kind of like gentle, right? It doesn't look like she's trying to go take off like a rocket ship and go fly. So I would be careful with this one because what I don't want to happen is that I give that cue and it get worse. I don't want to give that cue and she's like, okay, I'm gonna throw my hips now, and she reverts into this big arch again and goes like backwards. So I need to make sure that she's gonna maintain this hollowed body here in like that banana shape, but I need her to be okay with getting really aggressive with the hips with it. So it's like she's throwing them at that pull-up bar as hard as she physically can without arching her back and reaching her chest. I do think she has a lot more aggression. You guys see that? It's just a little soft.
Yeah, I also think that when she needs a little bit more of an over grip. Because I feel like when she gets into that hollow at the top, her hands are too like this,
Behind.
and it's gonna be harder for her to turn around and get it over.
Yeah, let me pause it because I do see exactly. That one looks better than the second one. The second one is like right there, like the hands totally behind the bar. Yeah, versus if she was like, I don't want to even call it a false grip, but like a pseudo false grip where she's slightly over top. I do think you're 100% right. When she does get there, that may block her out. When I did the gymnastics course, there was this girl there that was like one of these people that walk in the room and you go, holy shit, like this person is a athlete. Like you can just see it on them. And they kind of like did a little like, why are you here for every person? And we had a small group and she was like, I don't have bar muscle ups. And they were like, okay, like what else do you struggle with? She was like, nope, that's it. Like she literally just couldn't do a bar muscle up. She could rip sets of 15 rings, but couldn't do a bar muscle up. So you go, what the hell? That makes no sense. And that was her problem. She just had a very strong grip. She jumped on the bar. Her hand was completely on the backside of the bar, and she never allowed it to rotate over, or she didn't start in that partial rotation, which makes it a lot easier. And the guy was like, dude, stop death gripping it. Just like let your bar slide over or try to get more on top. And the girl literally went from never doing a bar muscle up to like easy sets of 10 at the master's course. And that's all it was. She just wasn't letting her hand let her get over. So you do see that sometimes. It's just like a roadblock for people that stops them. So I didn't catch that. That's a really good catch, Steve, there.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but for me, one of my problems, I brought this up a bunch, is trying to catch it with that pike position or hollow position to get the
And have
thumb
it right.
under, and then without having like any kind of clunkiness at the hand position. Like it's like maybe
It's
1 in 5 times I can do it correctly.
it's like kind of funny to say, but like it's a skill in itself because like the grip's kind of in the way sometimes, or if it's crooked. Something that I think works really well for me because I wrap my thumb. I think like if you learn how to wrap your thumb and you get it well, it's like a lock in, and it does make your grip feel a lot better than just throwing over top. But what I have trouble with is like you, I can't just go over top and wrap my thumb instantly. It's always terrible. So I'll go over top and I'll be suicide for like 1 rep. And then I go ahead and lock it in. And that's helped me a lot is to like allow myself to get into the groove of it and then just go whoop, and that's been a game changer.
Same,
And I
but
still
you know,
miss.
but you know what? It's when you're in competition, they can like they can call a no rep for doing that because like you got to be very careful that you don't move your hands because technically you're not supposed to take your hands off of the bar when you're doing a second rep. Because I usually go suicide first and then
Yeah,
I do that and then I accidentally take my hands a little bit, like I move them and they're like, nope, no, you got to come down again.
yeah, because I do think you're not allowed to stop at the top and like because people used to rest up there.
Like you can't regrip, yeah.
Yeah,
So
people
you got to
used
be
to.
careful with that. Just take your thumb around without moving anything else.
Just people used to literally stop up there. Like I remember one year in the open, it was like a set of 16, and all of us that were pretty good at muscle ups would do like 5 to 6, and then just rest on top of the bar instead of coming off, and then we'd push off and then keep going, and they stopped that. So I do think like you're right, but I think that would also be like probably at a higher level competition that they would get weird about that. Um, but yeah, for me, like I don't have to move my hands when I do it. I literally just wrap my thumb around. But I have seen even people that like just like to move their hands around in general when they're up there because they missed their spot. So that it could totally be a possibility. But yeah, I think overall with Elise, like I'm very happy with the position. I think that's huge. I think no matter what our feedback is on this movement, like that takeaway alone is a huge improvement for her. And then I just want to get her jumping maybe a little more into a pike and just more aggressive there. So we start to float higher and higher. I think if she takes this and just starts to work on her aggression and just over time, just getting another inch by inch, she has the skill from jumping of that initial turnover. Her problem is we just got to get up there without the arch reach so she can apply that skill of the turnover. But super stoked about this in general. Let's go. Let's change it up. Let's go. Go barbell. So these, I think it's really slow. There, the prescription was a tempo, so it's not just like going slow to go slow. Oh, slightly in the way of the see enough. What do you guys got? The big easy one.
I feel like I've seen D go lower in her squats before.
That's not D. The girl's D size.
Oh. Okay.
It is a little blurry too. Yeah, I would say they're roughly the same size. So they do. D, I think you put your hair up like that occasionally.
That's what I thought it was.
Same. Yeah, with big t-shirt and shorts. It's mini D. Her name is Sierra. So I immediately noticed the knees. So like I pull slightly in the way. You can see it, especially that outside foot. Like you can see that foot super clear, and then the pole's almost like it's almost like a level. Like you can use it as a tool the way it's positioned here. That knee collapses in. It's definitely on the inside of the foot, and then in the very bottom. When she comes out, it has like another little wave. So I think it's really, really like initiating the squat with the knees driving out really hard, and then she's got to fight it all the way through. There's probably still going to be maybe a little bit of a wave there, but I think she has to fight this as she's going down with it. You guys see that? That would be part of it. There's a lot of things I really like. Her brace is really good. Her feet are as flat as can be. She does a really good job there. And then to Justin's point, the depth, she's definitely hitting depth, like hip, like we know she's down there, but like you can tell there's some tension there. Like there's like that's not a maybe a super comfortable spot. I think that pushing the knees out really hard will give her a little bit more room in the hips to be able to access more range of motion. I would like the more range of motion, especially when we start to talk about, you know, Olympic weightlifting, and that she's probably going to get put there at some point in time on a heavy clean or a heavy snatch. So that would be like my first thing to work on, knees out and maybe accessing more because her back's flat. I was in class with it, so I have like that perspective too. And then there's one more thing I think could be maybe a hair better.
Perhaps leading more with her chest.
Like in the up, you mean? I think that could be helpful. It's not bad, but there's
It's
like a
not
little
terrible.
teeter. Like
Yeah.
we could maybe make this a like you look at the squat a hair better.
Yeah. Like I noticed the knee thing, but in some of them you can tell she's trying to push them out on the, at least on the way up.
Yeah,
Not
because
on
they
all
wave.
of them. Yeah. But I think like maybe, you know, to your point, if she's tries starting off that way, it'll be much better. Instead
And I
of just
think that's-
focusing on that after.
I think that's the difference. Because she does have a really good focus on pushing them out as she's coming up, which I like. But I do definitely think she's like starting the fight before the fight has begun. I think that does make a big difference. So I totally agree with you. I think if she just also gets a hair more, but back and then down, she'll get better engagement with driving the knees out too. Like the glutes and the hips will just be more into a play ball situation. And I think that may become a little easier too.
She's like a quad dominant squatter. Besides her quads being big, like just the bar path looks like it's all like
Yeah,
front.
she
front
is, and she is very like up and down with it. So yeah, I think if we just get the hips back, it'll the butt back and down. It'll get the hips a little more involved. It'll get the glute a little more involved. The glute is more involved. Now that's our knee stabilizer. Like we can get those out easier, essentially. Overall, it's a pretty good squat. Like it's fairly decent mover. Just very small things. Like leading the way with the chest out of the bottom. Like by no means is she egregiously bending over, but it's just a little attention to detail that I like that would just make her an even better mover. You guys have all seen Jose squat. I remember the first time I dropped him to SoFlo, I think it was Jason that was like, oh, you know, Jose's like, he squats and it's this awesome, like he's the best like demo person, right? It's beautiful squat. Like essentially if you think of like, that's that chasing virtuosity. Like it's super common to do a squat. It's super common to do an air squat. Someone like Jose is doing it uncommonly well. It's so pretty. Like we should be striving to get everybody to that point. And like that video of Sierra doing these squats is a good example of that. Like it's pretty good. Like most coaches are gonna walk by and be like, nice job. Or maybe just knees out. And like, yes, we could go knees out, but yes, we could also go hip back and down a little more, right? And then like to Dee's point, she could be a little more upright in the start of her ascent as well. And that would make it even prettier. And then you go, man, have you seen her squat? Like that's even better. Like we should be chasing that compliment that someone wants to talk about our movement or talk about our athletes' movements because it's so good.
Yeah, like when you have a class and you have the more advanced people, not to like just ignore them and just try
Yeah,
to
that's
find
what-
that point that you can make them a little bit better.
That's a great example. When you have that person that's you know banging out ring muscle ups or whatever it is, and you coach them to the point where it's so nice where people go, oh, like that should be our goal. For me, I have a ridiculously nice hollow. Like when I'm on the ground and I do a hollow hold, it's the most boring movement you've probably ever looked at someone do in their life. But when I do them in front of people, especially that are invested and they're like know about gymnastics, they say something to me and they compliment it. And when I went to Mako and I was there, I had like 5 people compliment my hollow hold. And it's kind of funny because you're like, this is so rudimentary and like not an exciting movement, but it goes to show like you can recognize like that mastery. And if we can take that and just put that into everything, especially when we're coaching or moving ourselves, like the sky's the limit. Because when we're like that, the efficiency's through the roof. And then we're gonna see those gains and those things that we're chasing come so much faster versus when we're working against ourselves, just killer. I forgot I had this ring muscle up and I figured because of Dee's video, this is another really good one to look at. I believe this is Johnny. That's something muscle up. Some things I noticed real fast that I love. And then obviously there's some things that I don't love. Be something good or bad. Even if you're not sure, to something you're like, I don't like that.
So I think he initiated his kip pretty well, but then when he brought his feet way too above, like his feet were above his head. He didn't really keep that kind of like that half vertical, half horizontal.
Regardless of the fact that if those feet go above the rings or above the bar, it's a no rep. Like, let's just ignore that and not care about that at all, right? Let's say that's not a thing. They're going so high that I think they're actually the reason that he blocked himself out from this muscle up. So let's just like go in order. You said like the 2 things that I didn't like, or I liked and I didn't like. I like his start. He gets a great like false grip in there, and especially because he's like doing a kip that's even more impressive. And do I need a full-blown false grip? No. I would call this like kind of a pseudo. Like he's on top of the ring, it's there, but it's not this like if I was doing a strict, I'm really gonna set it in and I'm really, really gonna stay bent. So I really like that. I love the way he grabs these rings. I do think he initiates the kip well. He gets the feet out in front when we're on a dynamic element. Our kip is going to be initiated by those feet a lot more, right? So I like that. I like that he lets himself open up here. So like in this position, his shoulders are 180 degrees. I even like it when people are able to get past 180 a little bit. Could he have stayed more tense in the low body, kind of butt kicks himself? Yeah, but I don't think that's the reason he misses this. But I do like that he gets into like he's Superman here. He gets into that big arch. We need that. A lot of people cut it short, and it's too much like a bar muscle up, not a ring muscle up. The kip is different. So his start, absolutely love it. I think he did a really good job there, minus a little tiny tweak. Here, it's almost like he's got the momentum I want him to have, but it's segmented. Like his momentum is so much from the hip down into the feet that his feet just fly up there, right? And it's almost like his hip and torso is like behind it. So it's like his feet are leading the way, the hip torso is behind. If he had some, I would say, better tension where the hip stays more or less lined up with the feet and the feet aren't leading, but they're going together, I think he nails this muscle up, right? So I think these definitely get too high. If they're, I'm gonna pause it. Let me pause it right in his apex. Like this position here, if I cut his legs off, I'm like, hell yeah, great job. These, if we just bring them down and he's more like if he was in a hollow body and I laid him on the floor, this torso is doing the same thing, but his butt is a little like more squeezed and he's more into like more of a subtle hollow and he's more parallel to the floor, then I don't think he runs into a problem with the transition. Right. So I would just give him that ceiling of wait for your feet. When your feet are like in your peripheral point of view, try to just ring row yourself up without letting them be the full momentum catalyst.
Would it be like safe to say maybe lead with your hips instead of with your feet?
For him, yeah. I think that would be a really good key for him because he's got so much like on the feet end that may balance him out more. Like I still think he's going to end up having the same hip, but it would just like a small tweak that we want him to have. I think when we're looking at other people, it's the opposite. You're trying to get them to have more legs and feet and maybe less like emphasis on hip. So it's definitely diagnosing on what each athlete needs. And that's the person that's doing a hip that's more like a bar muscle up hip and needs to be more like a ring muscle up hip. Johnny, I would just say is maybe the opposite there. So the fact that he's doing this, like, I don't love it. I think it does make him and his transition harder through, but he's got like the concept I really want him to have in getting that momentum in the hip. And then this thing is going so aggressively and leading the way so much that when he goes back and he is going to try the attempt, it's kind of funny. He actually changes his pull totally. Isn't that wild? Like from that to that, but then his feet like knee him in the chest. And I think that's what actually blocks. You can kind of see it. Watch his hair. His hair is a really good tool for this that would slow mo. His hair's there, and then you can see where there's right there impact and his head shoots back, his hair shoots back. I think he literally knees himself in the chest and lets himself not get through the rings like he needs to. So if he can take
too when he's up that high.
Say that again, Gina.
It almost looks like there's not tension in the rings anymore once he's high. Like right before he transitions, you kind of see like the rings.
Yeah, like everything almost goes like slack. Like there's no, besides maybe in his arms, like everything's relaxed. I do agree with that. If he could take this and not be way above the ring and then get to this to where he's still in that straight line and the feet swing under him and he swings instead, I think he goes straight through. Yeah, you can see the straps are flying all over the place. So I think he really has two easy things to work on. Let's do this same hip to ring because it's beautiful. Besides the fact that the feet have maybe too much, I think if he masters that, and then when he's going to attempt the muscle up, he just keeps more tension in his legs. So his body's more of a unit moving rather than a book folding. I think he could just rip for the muscle ups. Like I think he has the potential to go from like figuring it out to 5, 6, 7, 8 reps like unbroken. Yeah, two big things here. I got one more thing I thought of. It's a good thing. You catch the last good thing? Not that you're going to coach and point it out to him, but I think it's a tool to notice in others. So watch when he, like his shoulders are, they're essentially relaxed. So like when you do rings, there's so much momentum that your shoulders have to be like like a hinge with no resistance, right? They have to be able to glide. A lot of people don't trust themselves and they don't let them just like freely glide and let the momentum come from what the body's doing. they try to stay like too tense and too active in the hip, and there's not this like lubricated shoulder that's letting it fly. He does a really good job of his initial kip there, and I think that's why he's able to get very open. But then when he does his pull, like it's a free fall. That's a free fall into the next one. If he does this hip to ring and he doesn't let himself free fall and relax, he's not going to let himself flow and like ride that. I always imagine it as like a half pipe ramp. He's not going to be able to ride that into the next one. If he has any tension there, he's going to stop and lose the momentum of his kip. And it's going to be like a 50% effort versus watch the hip to ring and just how he falls out of it. That's a great job. And that's why when we hip on the rings, if you are like letting yourself really open up into the arch, really letting yourself get into the hollow, and you're getting very parallel to the floor back here, parallel to the floor in front, and you start to apply this little elbow bend, and then you just fall back into it a little more, and you fall back into it. That kipping motion and like his hip to ring, he's accidentally, or maybe not accidentally, training how to string muscle up reps, even though he's not doing full muscle up reps yet. Does that make sense? So even though someone doesn't have the turnover ring muscle up part, you can train how to fall properly and get into a good next kip. And then when you do finally figure this out and go, now it's a factor of, oh, I don't have to figure out how to do two now. I know how to do two because I know I need to fall out and let gravity help me out on the situation because you've like muscle memory trained it. Does that make sense? And sometimes it's a nerve-wracking thing too. Sometimes like people, you have to like get them to relax to like allow themselves to do it. And that's why starting with a small elbow bend into it is a good idea because they're not falling out of the top for the first time. They're doing it from a couple inches. Anything else you guys want to comment on this? Oops.
Usually at the first part of the hip, you'd be like turning the wrist forward, right? Like supinating.
Like his hand position, you mean?
Yeah, like usually they say to put your hand forward in that arch.
Yeah. So right here, technically, yeah, he shouldn't be like neutral. He technically should be like the palms are facing forward. That is a thing. When I did my gymnastics course, that was one of like my feedbacks. Like I did the same thing as him. Like I opened up big and I turned, and basically I had Sean. What he told me is like because you're allowing the separation to happen, like you're losing tension that you can have like from that like elastic like reaction. So yeah, that's a really good catch. I didn't notice. And I would say that's definitely one too that like for Johnny, some of those other tweaks are gonna get him to a ring muscle up. And then now we start to like really fine tune and go from there. It's a weird one though. If you've never felt that hand positioning always opened up and then you go to that hand positioning, it's a interesting experience. Let's go one more. Oh, barbell. Oh, here, let me find it. Wait, did we watch this one last week?
I don't think we watched it last week, but we may have watched this in the past. I can't recall.
We'll finish with it. So I would call this a heavy or a moderate heavy like barbell cycle you're doing. Like I could tell it doesn't feel extremely easy, but it's not so heavy to where like you had to go to like full singles. So definitely there's some like load. But you're able to move quick on it. Go ahead, Dee, I think you got something.
I was gonna say I like his initiating like position.
Like on the floor or the touch and go?
Yeah, yeah, from the floor. Like I like that position. I think maybe just keep his eyesight to the front.
Mhm.
And I think if he has an early bend of the elbows, he's already pulling there.
Yeah. Definitely a tough one. Sorry, I thought you were done. Definitely a tough habit to break. Like that's one that I don't know if this is a Metcon or not, but like it's gonna have to be like outside of Metcon at like super lightweight because I had the same problem and it's something I've been working on a long time. Let's slow-mo through and really look at the arms to see. So it's bent. And Justin, you keep them bent. So like at this low, you're not necessarily losing the tension and like straightening out versus if it gets to be a really heavy clean, what tends to happen is that person's bent. And then if you slow mo them through, you see them lose it because the load and like intensity of like the speed part of it are so high that like that little bicep can't keep it. And also just from like a safety thought of it too is like that's how biceps do pop sometimes. And you see it happen on tire flips where people try to like bicep curl a tire and it's just too much load for that little muscle. So not that like you're gonna pop a bicep here, but for long-term 10-year health, that would be something definitely to work on. And that's obviously with the efficiency part of it too. I love that you turn over and you're in the dip of the clean and you're using that for the drive of your jerk. I think that's a great skill to have. It flows on a clean jerk. It's quick. So I think really nice job with that. I think the part that it gets you a little bit, I'm gonna slow-mo it, is because you're landing in the dip and you're using that so well, I kind of think you start to cut off your initial pull. Like it's hard to see because the weight's in the way, but like you're not getting to like a full extension before getting under. Like you're just slightly clipping it because you're getting there. Something like doing grace. What's this grace, by the way? Do you remember? 30 clean and jerks per time. It looks like it. Everyone's clean and jerking. But like, let's say you're doing grace and you're doing 30 clean and jerks per time, or you're doing the quarterfinal workout. And it's like 10 clean and jerks, and then it rests, 10 clean jerks, and then it rests 10, and then the rest of the time it's a heavy load and the loads go up. It's basically a terrible grace variation that they have programmed. Like you're doing that. A lot of times athletes' quads super blow up. And I think you have like so much tension the whole time here that you would probably feel it even more versus like getting the efficiency of moving that bar the entire time. And then the flip side of like not fully finishing the pull is like on Grace, it's just such fast movement on this quarterfinal WOD that came out. Like I'm pretty sure they are clean and jerks. You're using so much upper body for the clean when you don't have to, that like that is potentially going to become a factor there too. So I think on these movements, even though it's a bang, turn around from the dip to the drive of the jerk, like finish them, like let the hips really do their jobs on both ends. That would be my biggest feedback for this. I think the arm thing we'd have to like, chip through and work on over time. I think the hips you could get like instantly. You do a good job in the heels and like all that. Like there's a lot of good things happening. Your bar pad looks really nice too.
The last thing I would say is like when you're coming down, don't let yourself just fall with the bar. Like kind of control it a little bit more or drop it from the top or something.
Like on the hip to floor part.
Yeah, I think I was trying to cycle these faster than I usually would. That was like one of the things I was trying to focus on. And where I noticed that, like, where I can be a lot better is when the barbell is hitting the floor. It's like it's there's zero control on the way down, and it takes me some time to kind of reset, as opposed to having probably expending a little bit more energy to control on the way down, kind of like what you're saying, D. And then um, I think that would it would make the cycle time be faster.
Yeah, because if you control it on the way down, you'll keep tension to come back up.
Yeah.
That's exactly. Something I do too, like it's the same as like when you guys do really heavy deadlift sets, and the first one you're like, oh god, it's a tough one to get off the floor, and then the second one you're like tap and you're fine, and it's like heavy, but you have that tension and it's so much easier. Or like when we have dead stop deadlifts and you have to stop at the floor and take a second and then go, and they just the second so much harder. That's basically what you are doing here. Like you have that free fall that Dee's talking about and that complete loss of tension to where that next rep could feel lighter. So yeah, I'm on board with that 100%. Something I do is I use my body as like the line of action and like where I need to be with the bar. So like if it's heavy, I'm coming down the same way you are. I'm coming to the shoulder, and then I'm basically like letting it go down my belly to my thigh, and then it's thighs, shins, tap, back up. So it's like I need to be tracing from basically my chest. I'm tracing my body lightly all the way down. Because I do think with barbell cycling a lot, you see people that will keep tension, but they don't really keep a frontal plane happening. And when they go to the floor, it's like in front of it's like toe level or in front of their feet. And now the bar's out in front, and they're doing much more work than they need to be to, because they're not staying in the frontal plane on the down, which can be just as important as staying in it on the up.
I'm pretty sure that's exactly what's happening with me, because almost every rep I'm pulling the bar back into my shin once it hits the floor. Like maybe it's only an inch or two, but I feel like every
It
single
makes
time.
a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see it right there.
Yeah.
Like you're like maybe I would say like ball a foot, and then look at you roll it. It's very slight. You roll it.
Yeah.
So like give yourself like your own tactile target. Like trace your body, and then what may help really good for you is like trace your body, and my target piece is shoelaces, like not of the shoelaces, and that'll take away from that little tiny bit. It's crazy to say, but like if you've got 135 pounds on the bar, and you're saying I'm moving an extra inch every single rep, and like you have a workout that's got 30 reps, like that's 30 inches. It's 2 feet of movement that you did in a spot where you just like don't have to at all. And like, is that a lot? No, but if you say you have that extra there, and you have another half inch extra here, and then by the end of this workout, you're like, wow, I moved an extra 60 inches of weight. Like that's 5 feet, and someone else next to me may not have had to move an extra 5 feet. Like those things just do add up. Especially when you're looking at longer, 20-minute pieces or workouts that are getting into the, 100+ reps, which is not even a ton of reps. But if you say 100 reps of an extra inch and a half of movement, like you've moved so much more than you actually have to. So yeah, try that next time you do them. Like think about tracing the body. It doesn't have to be fast on the way down. Trace the body and think like shoelaces and see if that helps you. And I think the thought slow is smooth and smooth is fast may be a good mind frame for you practicing these as well. Favorite CrossFit quote for sure. And it's so true. When you can just get real steady, even though you're not looking blazing, but like the steadiness never goes away, it's usually a fairly quick workout.
Well, that's a Navy SEAL quote. CrossFit stole it from the Navy SEAls.
Yeah. CrossFit was basically not made, founded, but definitely a large Navy SEALs were a very, very large part. Yeah, practice that, and when you do it, send another video and at some point. You don't have to go like a ninja jerk tomorrow, but whenever they come back up. All right, I think that's about our time. You guys have anything you want to add before we call it a day? We're gonna look at next Tuesday. We're gonna look at like the timing, the competition timing. We'll review that for the question you had on Tuesday, Justin. Like when do they need to be eaten to be like used as glycogen? So we'll touch on that. We won't spend maybe a ton of time on it because we talked about it last week and we've done it before. And we'll just start to get more into like eating for gains and competitiveness, I would say, than just health. I think we've covered the just health part pretty well. So we'll get into that next week. And I want to get into like how many carbs are going to be optimal for those things because we see elite athletes eating 400 or 500 carbs. I want to know the whys, deeper whys on that. So that'll be Tuesday. And if you guys don't have anything, we'll see you then. See you guys.
Thank you. Bye.
See you, Gina.